a few minutes ago, we read Susan Collins' tweet regarding the state and local tax deduction, Congressman. Do you think that this development could potentially now change your vote when as this thing moves forward?
No, not at all, Kevin. What Susan Collins has proposed in her amendment is already in the House bill. What it does is it allows families to deduct up to $10,000 from their property tax from their federal returns. That's already in the House bill, but that's already coming back from what the current allowance is to deduct your property tax. So this is a cap of $10,000, which certainly hurts the people that I represent. They're not including any state or local income tax deduction, which New Yorkers pay 10% of the salaries towards their state and local taxes. It's a deduction that's been in the tax code since 1913. And in fact, in 1986, when the Reagan administration overhauled the tax code, they kept that deduction in. So what Susan Collins is proposing is already in the tax bill that I voted no on.
You only got 13 no votes on the House bill. Will you be able to get more lawmakers to vote against the final bill if only the property taxes are included?
You know, Shelley, I'm not sure. I've heard that people voted yes on the House version because they were told when the bill goes to conference that a lot of their concerns would be addressed. One of those concerns being the delegation from California, who has a very high state and local income tax, and they're going to be harmed by not allowing their constituents to deduct that from their federal returns. So I heard that those folks were waiting for a fix. I just haven't seen the fix.
Congressman, it sounds like you're not convinced that this battle is it sounds like what you're saying is that this battle's far from over and that there's going to be potential problems when this thing gets to conference.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. You know, I was a prosecutor for 20 years. People vote yes or no for various reasons. People, as your reporter was saying before I got on the air, your reporter was saying that there are people who are concerned about the deficit and the increase in the deficit. I'm concerned about the individuals in Brooklyn and in Staten Island who are trying to put food on their table, who are trying to pay for their children's education and depend on this tax deduction. Every April, they wait for that check to come from the U.S. Treasury, and they either pay a bill with it, take their family on vacation, or repair something in their home, and they're just not going to get that anymore out of the bill that's being proposed now.
Congressman, you're up for re-election next year. How will what you and the GOP do today affect the outcome of the midterm elections?
Well, you know, I can't speak for anybody but myself. The voters are very smart, Shelley. They will realize that I've been their voice down here in Washington, that I stood up for what I believe is best for them and their families. And even if it was against my own party, eliminating this deduction for them is going to harm them. And in many cases, it'll result in a tax increase. And I just can't do that to the people that trusted me to come down to Washington to be their voice. So I think the voters will look how I stood up for their beliefs and for their families. And I think that will be reflected in the election next year.
Congressman, I hear you on the point of how ultimately if folks see a tax increase, that's going to be devastating to whomever their lawmaker is or their elected officials are. But my reporting has led me to the conclusion that the administration wants to get to entitlement reform next spring, and that would potentially be a fix-it period to fix some of the problems, so to speak, if this tax reform passes. Walk me through the chances of, number one, a government shutdown in December, and number two, the real possibility of entitlement reform happening next spring.
Well, I hope that our government doesn't shut down. No one sent their representative, Kevin, to Washington to shut their government down. They actually sent us down here to try to make it work better for them. So my hope is that we don't have a government shutdown. As far as entitlement reform, there's things that we have to change. You know, the experts, the economists said that if we don't do something with Social Security or Medicare, that by 2034 it won't exist. They won't be able to pay out full benefits to people. They'll only be able to pay out 75%. That's unfair to people who for 40, 50 years have been paying into Social Security and Medicare. They deserve their benefits. Maybe we have to change some of the things for the people who are entering the system now. Maybe for the younger folks, extend the age in which they collect their benefits. Maybe have them put more money into the program. But we certainly can't affect the people who are receiving benefits now. Or I'm 61 years old, Kevin. I'll be I'm on the edge now. I got to make sure I get at least one Social Security check.
Congressman, how important is for the GOP at this juncture to be able to show to the public that they can actually successfully run the government without a shutdown?
Yeah, you're exactly right. As I said, people sent us down here to make their government run more efficiently and better for them and their families, and that's what we often have to do. But often, a lot of our differences seem to be regional, even sometimes not even partisan. The people like myself, I'm a rarity. I'm a Republican who represents an urban area. A lot of my colleagues on my side of the aisle represent more rural areas. So they have different concerns for the people they represent than the people I represent. Many of my colleagues have 18, 20 counties in which they represent. I have one county and a portion of another because we're such densely populated where I live. So I think a lot of the differences that we're trying to come to terms with, we have to realize that everyone represents a different 740,000 people, but we have to actually represent them and not some policy, some piece of legislation that's going to harm them.